What if the person you once loved more than anything suddenly appeared in front of you again? Not in a movie scene, not in a dream, but at your child's parent-teacher meeting. Imagine sitting in that crowded school auditorium, the buzz of voices fading into the background, when the doors swing open and every head turns. And there she is, the one who once held your heart, the girl you thought you lost forever. Only now she is no longer the shy soul who sketched promises in notebooks. She is a powerful woman whose name commands entire boardrooms. Michael adjusted his collar nervously, unaware of the storm about to rip through his quiet life. A single dad, raising his 8-year-old daughter Chloe with calloused hands and sleepless nights. He had built walls of routine around himself. Work, chores, school drop-offs. Loneliness had become the air he breathed. But nothing could have prepared him for the moment fate decided to play its cruel game. When Isabella Carter walked in, the world seemed to tilt. The confident stride, the tailored navy suit, the commanding presence. Michael's heart nearly stopped. Memories from years ago crashed over him like waves. Late-night phone calls, whispered secrets, promises that once felt eternal. He blinked, and reality returned. She was not a dream. She was flesh and blood, standing only a few feet away. And you, watching this, must stay until the end. Because this is not just another story. This is about second chances. About destiny colliding with ordinary life. About a father who never thought love would knock on his door again. Tonight you will witness a tale that proves one truth. Sometimes the past does not stay buried. Sometimes it walks right back into your life. Michael was not the kind of man who sought attention. His life had become a carefully balanced act of survival, one that revolved around a little girl with bright eyes and an endless smile. Chloe was 8 years old, a bundle of laughter and curiosity, and the very reason Michael pushed himself every single day. To anyone else, he was simply another father sitting in the school auditorium, tie pulled awkwardly around his neck. But inside he carried the weight of years filled with sacrifice and loneliness. He had learned long ago that being a single parent meant playing every role at once. He was the provider, the caretaker, the cleaner, the chef, and the comforter when nightmares woke his daughter in the dark of night. He had calluses on his hands from the construction jobs that paid their bills. But the deeper marks were invisible. They came from the quiet evenings when Chloe asked questions about a mother she barely remembered. Michael never had the heart to tell her the truth, that her absence had cut through him like glass, leaving scars he never showed. On this particular night, the school auditorium was alive with chatter. Parents filed in, exchanging polite smiles, waiting for the principal to begin. Michael sat stiffly, scanning the crowded rows, his heart already uneasy. There was something different in the air. The teacher had mentioned earlier that a special guest would be addressing the parents. He tried not to think much of it, telling himself it was probably another district official or a motivational speaker. Still, the idea of someone important arriving made him shift uncomfortably in his seat. Chloe waved at him from across the room, surrounded by her friends, her laughter rising above the murmur of voices. For a moment, Michael's chest tightened with pride. She was the light in his life, the one pure thing that reminded him he was not completely broken. He forced a smile, returning her wave, though deep inside the ache of loneliness pressed harder. Nights were long, days were heavy, and moments like these reminded him of how far away happiness seemed. The principal tapped the microphone. The static silenced the crowd. "Thank you for coming tonight. We have an extraordinary program prepared for you. In addition to celebrating the progress of our students, we are honored to welcome a distinguished speaker who will share insight into balancing the demands of leadership with the responsibilities of parenthood." Michael adjusted his collar again, his pulse quickening. Leadership, responsibility. The words echoed in his head, almost taunting him. What could a guest speaker possibly say that he did not already know from living it every single day? Still, he leaned forward slightly, curiosity pulling at him despite himself. The double doors at the back of the hall remained closed for now, but every parent seemed to sense the anticipation. The air thickened with expectation, as though the room itself was waiting for something more than just a speech. Michael sat back, unaware that in a matter of minutes, the life he had carefully built out of routine and quiet sacrifice would be shaken to its core. Fate was about to walk through those doors, and he had no idea that it would carry the face of the woman he once loved more than life itself. The double doors groaned open, and the entire auditorium seemed to inhale at once. The chatter that had filled the room only seconds earlier collapsed into a silence so sharp it could cut. Every parent turned their head. Every child froze, and Michael felt his pulse slam in his ears. She appeared. Isabella Carter. The name that once belonged to a timid girl who scribbled her heart into the margins of his notebooks now belonged to a woman who carried entire rooms with nothing more than her presence. Her heels struck the polished floor with a rhythm that commanded attention. Her tailored navy suit shimmered beneath the bright auditorium lights, sculpting her into a figure of authority. Her chin was lifted, her eyes forward, her stride unwavering. She was not a guest. She was a storm entering a room of still air. Michael's breath faltered. He felt the years peel away as if time itself had betrayed him. In that single instant, he was no longer the man with calloused hands and sleepless nights. He was the 17-year-old boy standing under the bleachers, holding her hand, believing love could last forever. He remembered the way her laughter used to chase away his doubts. He remembered whispered promises in the dark, promises that cracked and broke when life pulled them apart. She had left town to chase a dream. He had stayed behind to protect a fragile future. And for 2 decades, he convinced himself that chapter was over. But here she was, walking straight into his present. The principal's voice rose above the tension. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are honored to welcome Isabella Carter, Chief Executive Officer of Carter Global Tech, one of the leading forces in international innovation. Applause erupted, polite but trembling. Michael could not join in. His palms were clammy, his body frozen, his mind unraveling. Isabella's gaze swept across the crowd. For a brief second, her eyes locked with his. The auditorium disappeared. There were no parents, no teachers, no children. There was only the past colliding with the present in a spark that nearly burned through him. But then her expression shifted. Her professional smile returned, the practiced mask of a woman who conquered boardrooms. She looked away. Michael's stomach twisted. Had she recognized him, or had time buried him so deep in her memory that he no longer existed? He forced himself to stay seated, though every part of him screamed to rise, to speak, to shatter the walls she had built around herself. Instead, he sat still, gripping the edge of his chair, trying to quiet the storm inside. The speech began. Words about leadership, about balancing roles, about motherhood and ambition. The parents leaned in, nodding with admiration. But Michael heard only fragments. His mind was not in the present. It was trapped in the echoes of Isabella's laughter, in the taste of lost summers, in the memory of promises broken by distance and silence. For the first time in years, he felt alive and terrified all at once. Fate had not just brushed against him. It had slammed through the doors, dressed in navy, wearing the face of the only woman who had ever owned his heart. The principal's voice boomed through the microphone, slicing through the tense silence. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are honored to welcome a woman whose name has become a symbol of innovation and resilience. Please join me in welcoming CEO Isabella Carter, the Chief Executive Officer of Carter Global Tech. The applause was immediate, loud, and almost desperate, as if the parents needed the noise to release the pressure building inside the room. Yet Michael's hands remained frozen in his lap. The words repeated in his mind again and again. CEO, Carter Global Tech. The timid girl who once doodled hearts in his notebook had transformed into one of the most powerful leaders in the world of technology. He felt the ground tilt beneath him, as though the very foundation of his life had shifted. Isabella stepped toward the podium with flawless confidence. She placed her hands gently on the sides, lifted her gaze, and smiled at the crowd. The smile looked effortless, polished, the smile of a woman who had been trained to command attention. Her voice carried warmth, but also authority. Thank you for having me. It is an honor to be here, not only as a leader, but also as a parent. The audience leaned in, eager, captivated. Michael sat rigid, his throat dry. He barely heard the elegant words she spoke about balancing leadership and family, about challenges in boardrooms, about victories that demanded sleepless nights. He was not listening to the speech. He was watching her. Every inflection in her tone reminded him of the girl who once whispered secrets beneath starlit skies. Every gesture of her hand pulled him back to the nights they swore they would never let go. Then it happened. Her eyes scanned the audience, sliding from row to row. For a fleeting second, they landed on him. The smile faltered. It was so brief that no one else seemed to notice. But Michael felt the world collapse around that single glance. Her mask cracked. Her perfect composure wavered. Behind the CEO, behind the polished authority, he saw the ghost of the girl he had once loved. Michael's chest tightened. Did she recognize him? Or was it only a flicker of memory passing through her mind? His heart screamed to believe she knew, that she felt the same surge of electricity tearing through him. Yet she recovered instantly, her lips curling again into the professional curve that reassured the audience. She looked away, addressing the crowd with practiced calm. The applause thundered again when she finished a segment of her speech, but Michael heard none of it. His pulse drowned out the clapping. The air felt too heavy, every breath a struggle. He sat there, trapped between past and present, between the boy who once held her hand and the man who now sat powerless in a crowd of strangers. For the rest of the room, Isabella Carter was a CEO, a symbol of success. For Michael, she was still the girl who had stolen his heart, and with a single glance across a crowded auditorium, she had stolen it all over again. The speech ended, and the auditorium erupted in applause. Parents surged forward, eager to shake Isabella's hand, eager to bask in her presence for even a fleeting moment. She greeted them with the polished smile of a public figure, her voice smooth, her movements precise. Cameras flashed, hands reached, questions swirled. She handled it all with the ease of a woman who had stood in front of thousands. Michael remained frozen in his seat. His body felt cemented, his hands gripping the edge of the chair as if letting go would cause him to collapse entirely. He could not move. He could not breathe. She was only a few steps away, and yet it felt like an ocean stretched between them. Fear clawed at him. What did he have to offer her now? What would he say? That he never stopped thinking about her, that he had lived in the shadow of her memory. Before he could decide, fate intervened. Chloe darted through the crowd, her small hand tugging at his sleeve. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. "Daddy, come on, you have to meet Sophie's mom." She pulled harder, and before he realized what was happening, he was being led straight toward Isabella. The sea of parents parted just enough for the girls to appear. Chloe, radiant with joy, and Sophie, standing shyly beside her, both unaware of the storm about to ignite. Isabella turned, her professional smile softening when she saw the children. Then her eyes lifted and collided with his. Time fractured. The noise of the crowd dulled. For a moment, there was only the weight of her gaze pressing into his chest. Her lips parted. She faltered. The mask of the CEO slipped, and in its place was the girl he had once kissed beneath a canopy of stars. "Michael," she whispered, her voice unsteady, carrying both disbelief and recognition. It has been so many years. The sound of his name on her lips nearly broke him. Memories he had buried clawed their way back, raw and merciless. He wanted to speak, but words caught in his throat. All he could do was stare, wide-eyed, as if afraid she might vanish if he blinked. Chloe looked between them, her innocence unshaken by the heavy silence. "Daddy, this is Sophie's mom. Isn't that amazing?" The girls giggled, oblivious to the undercurrent of emotion shaking their parents to the core. Michael finally found his voice, though it cracked under the weight of years lost. "Isabella." That single word carried all the pain, all the longing, all the unspoken questions. Her smile trembled, but for the first time that evening, it was real, genuine, vulnerable. The years melted away, leaving only two souls who had once been inseparable. In that moment, surrounded by strangers, Michael and Isabella stood on the edge of something terrifying and beautiful, a second chance neither of them had expected, a story fate had decided was not finished yet. A week passed, and Michael's life had barely settled back into rhythm when his phone buzzed with a message that stopped him cold. A name he had not seen in decades now appeared on his screen as if the years between them had been erased in an instant. The message was simple. "Let's meet." His heart hammered in his chest. He read it once, twice, 3 times, as if disbelief itself were trying to strangle him. They agreed on a small cafe across from the school. It was an unremarkable place, the kind of spot where students scribbled homework and parents grabbed coffee before work. But for Michael, it became the most charged ground he had ever stepped onto. He arrived early, hands trembling, eyes darting to the door every few seconds. When Isabella finally walked in, time fractured once again. She was no longer the girl he remembered, yet she was exactly the same. Her hair framed her face with elegance. Her presence was commanding, yet softened by a trace of vulnerability only he could see. For a moment he forgot how to breathe. They began with small talk, cautious and polite. The girls became their bridge. Chloe and Sophie had become inseparable, and so conversations circled around school projects, laughter, and the innocent bond of children untouched by the heaviness of the past. Michael clung to those safe topics, though every second threatened to drag him into memories he had buried. Eventually silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Michael's voice broke it, quiet but raw. "Do you ever think about it? About us?" The words escaped before he could stop them. Isabella tilted her head, her eyes softening, the facade of power slipping away. "Every day," she admitted, her voice trembling with honesty. "But I chose ambition. I chased it until it consumed me. And you stayed. You built a life here. A real one." Michael shook his head slowly. "A life? Yes, but it has been lonely. I never stopped wondering what happened to you." Her hand twitched against the table, as if fighting the urge to reach across. Finally, she let it fall closer, brushing the space between them. The air thickened. "I never stopped wondering either," she whispered. For a moment the cafe dissolved. The walls vanished. The hum of voices disappeared. It was only the two of them again, as if high school had never ended, as if decades had not intervened. Dreams of road trips, late-night songs, and whispered promises returned with brutal clarity. The ache of years apart pressed into them both, sharp and unrelenting. Michael swallowed hard, his heart racing. Could they step back into something that had been torn away by time and choices? Could the woman who conquered boardrooms still belong to the boy who became a man of bricks and sweat? Her gaze answered the question before her lips could. In her eyes burned the same fire that once lit up his youth. Fate had brought them to this table, and in that moment, both of them knew it was not by accident. The cafe hummed with the soft clatter of cups and the quiet shuffle of footsteps. But for Michael and Isabella, the world had narrowed to the fragile space between them. He stared at his coffee, untouched, his hands restless against the table. The weight of silence pressed heavily on his chest until he finally let the truth slip out, his voice low, rough, and trembling. "My life has been steady," he admitted, eyes fixed on the dark liquid in his cup. "I built a routine. I worked, I raised Chloe. I kept everything moving. But the truth is, it has been empty. I laugh with my daughter. I watch her grow. But when the nights come, it is just me. The house is quiet, too quiet. And I think of what might have been." Isabella's lips parted, her breath shallow, as if the words struck directly into her soul. She leaned back, the mask of strength faltering. "You think success fills the silence?" she whispered, her eyes glistening. "I thought if I climbed high enough, if I achieved enough, if the world knew my name, it would heal the wound. But it never did. The meetings, the awards, the articles, none of it touched the place where you used to be." Her hand moved slightly, almost involuntarily, across the table. The distance between them shrank. Michael's heart raced, pounding like a drum, as her fingers brushed the back of his hand. It was the smallest touch, yet it carried the weight of decades. His eyes lifted to hers, and what he saw there unraveled him completely. Her gaze was raw, unguarded, stripped of all the shields she had carried into boardrooms and onto magazine covers. There was no CEO here, no untouchable figure. There was only the girl who once cried in his arms when she was afraid of losing everything. The girl who had promised forever under a sky filled with stars. Michael's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, to tell her how many nights he had reached for a ghost, but he did not need to. The silence between them spoke louder than words ever could. Isabella's fingers lingered against his, her voice breaking. "I never stopped loving you, Michael. Not once. I told myself I was too busy. I told myself I had outgrown you. But the truth is, every success felt incomplete because you were not there to share it." Michael's breath caught, his body trembling with the force of emotions he had buried. He covered her hand with his own, firm and steady, grounding them both. His eyes shone with the same ache, the same longing. "And I never stopped waiting," he whispered. The cafe blurred around them. Time bent and folded, pulling them back into the gravity of their youth while anchoring them in the present. For a fleeting moment, everything else vanished. There was no audience, no weight of the world, no years of separation. There was only Michael and Isabella, bound together by the truth they had both hidden and the love they could no longer deny. The first weeks after their reunion unfolded like a fragile dream. Michael and Isabella began to see each other more often. Sometimes it was casual dinners where their daughters laughed together at a corner table. Sometimes it was school projects, where Michael carried boxes of supplies while Isabella offered sharp insights that impressed every teacher in the room. Other times it was quiet walks after rehearsal nights, when the girls ran ahead and the parents lingered just a little longer. On the surface, it looked simple. Two families blending, two people rediscovering what had once been lost. But beneath that fragile illusion, a storm brewed. The differences between their worlds were no longer hidden. They glared at them from every corner, pulling them apart even as their hearts pulled them closer. Isabella's life was a whirlwind of constant demands. Her phone never stopped buzzing with calls from investors and reporters. Her calendar was stacked with international flights, late-night video conferences, and endless negotiations that decided the fate of entire industries. She was a woman admired on magazine covers, quoted in business columns, and chased by cameras wherever she appeared. Michael's world was smaller but no less important. His mornings started before sunrise at construction sites, where the rhythm of hammer and drill built homes for his community. His evenings ended with cooking Chloe's favorite meals, helping with homework, and folding laundry in a house that echoed with silence once she fell asleep. He measured his success not in profits or headlines, but in the smile of his daughter and the respect of neighbors who relied on his craftsmanship. The contrast was blinding. Isabella's conversations were sprinkled with terms like mergers, acquisitions, and global expansion. Michael's revolved around roofing, plumbing, and the struggle to keep a small business alive. Every time she glanced at her vibrating phone during dinner, a shadow crossed Michael's eyes. Every time he missed a text because he was fixing a client's broken window, Isabella felt the distance stretch. They tried to bridge the gap. Isabella canceled one meeting to watch Sophie and Chloe perform in a school recital. Michael surprised her with tickets to a small-town fair, hoping to remind her of simpler joys. For a while it worked. Laughter returned. Warmth filled the spaces between them. But the unease remained. One evening, as they sat in Michael's modest living room with the girls asleep upstairs, the silence between them grew heavy. Isabella looked at him, her voice low and uncertain. Can two lives this different really fit together? Her words cut him deeper than she realized. He had asked himself the same question every night since she returned. Michael met her gaze, his expression torn between hope and fear. I do not know, he admitted, but I know I cannot walk away without trying. The tension hung thick in the air. For the first time since their reunion, it was clear that love alone would not be enough. They stood at the edge of a chasm, unsure if they could build a bridge strong enough to carry them across. The auditorium smelled faintly of paint and dust, the stage crowded with children rehearsing their lines. Chloe and Sophie giggled with their classmates, their voices filling the room with innocence. But in the back row, away from the chaos of props and costumes, Michael and Isabella sat close enough for silence to hum between them. Isabella's hands were folded tightly in her lap, her posture rigid. For a woman who commanded rooms of powerful executives, tonight she looked fragile. Her voice broke the quiet, soft at first, then trembling with the weight of her confession. Michael, I have faced rooms filled with investors who wanted me to fail. I have stared into eyes that questioned every decision I ever made. I have fought battles in boardrooms that could ruin everything I built. None of it has ever terrified me as much as this. Nothing has ever scared me more than opening my heart to you again. Her words sliced through the air, piercing straight into him. Michael turned, searching her face, seeing not the CEO but the girl he had once sworn to love forever. Without hesitation, he reached for her hand. His touch was firm, steady, carrying a promise stronger than words. Then let us be scared together, he whispered, his voice low but unshakable. Because if we walk away this time, if we let fear win again, we will regret it for the rest of our lives. The lights dimmed slightly as the children began their final scene on stage. But Michael and Isabella were locked in their own. Tears glistened in her eyes, her lips trembling as if holding back years of longing. The past and present collided in that fragile moment, leaving no room for doubt. They were no longer two people separated by choices. They were two souls standing at the edge of love, ready to fall again. Together, their eyes locked, the weight of years melting away. And in that suspended moment, Michael leaned forward, closing the distance. Their lips met in a kiss, both hesitant and desperate. A kiss that carried every memory and every promise left unfinished. Around them, Chloe and Sophie laughed freely, chasing one another across the auditorium, unaware that their joy had become the silent witness to something extraordinary. For the first time in decades, hope surged, raw and undeniable. Life had turned a perfect circle, delivering not just a reunion, but a second chance at the love they thought was lost forever. A love lost but never forgotten. Michael and Isabella's reunion proves destiny always finds a way. If you believe in second chances and powerful stories of the heart, like, share, and subscribe now to never miss more unforgettable tales.